We could maybe start, if you could remember that 1957 trip. I read a little bit, but no part on Yugoslavia. So if you could, refresh your memory.
It is refreshing the memory. That 1957 was my last year in school, and I was a member of the Senior Boy Scouts. With a very enterprising teacher who took us camping to Austria. And we had a little camp in Villach. And we realized that the frontier of Yugoslavia was very close. So we tried to climb up the mountains to the frontier. Actually got to the ridge. It was called the Caravanken. Yeah. And the footpaths had all been dynamited. And there were no entry to Yugoslavia. So we came down and felt unhappy. We'd been denied entry, as it were. So I don't know how we did it. I think we went to the frontier, and they gave us a visa for, I don't know, a week or 10 days, something, a short visa. And then we went by train. Unfortunately, we didn't stop in Zagreb. The train went to Rijeka. And that was the first experience of as it were, communist rule. We were followed everywhere by. We were very young. I was 18. No, was I 18? 17 or 18? We stayed. I remember going to a little hotel, and they wouldn't give us a room because our visa wasn't for. It wasn't the right visa. So we went back to the square, and somebody came up to us and said, "Are you looking for a room?" So we had an illegal overnight stay, and in the morning the spy was waiting for us and followed us around. And I remember going up to him and saying, "What are you doing? We saw you yesterday. You're here again." And I spoke to him in Italian. It's the only language which, and of course he spoke better Italian than me. That was a beginning of quite a long story. We found the boat and went to Split. And came back, but it was my first taste of, if you like, communist rule. Of course, it left a lasting interest in that part of the world.
But nevertheless, you moved from Yugoslavia to the northern or west. Slavic countries.
I traveled a lot. I was interested in languages. I went to Yugoslavia briefly before I was going to Oxford. In Oxford, I read history, and then I started learning Russian, and went to Poland completely by accident. I signed up for a student trip to Moscow in the days when you had to buy a railway ticket, because the Soviet ruble was not exchangeable. So the idea, you bought your railway ticket, and then the Soviet authorities covered your stay in the Soviet Union. However, we bought our tickets, went to the Soviet embassy, or the Soviet consulate in London, in Kensington, and they just said, "We've no visa, you're not going." No explanation, nothing. So one of our group opened a map of Europe to see where these railway tickets would take us.
Good for, yeah.
And the answer was Terespol, which is on the Polish, now the Belarusian frontier, but then it was the Soviet Union. So we all went to the Polish consulate, and our leader went in and asked the consul, "I've got 30 students here, can we go to Poland? Because we've been refused a Soviet visa." And this is a Polish communist consul came out and said, "Everybody who's been refused a Soviet visa will be very welcome in Poland." So that's how we went to Poland. And of course, it was it made a big impression. Poland was not at all as people told us. It was a communist state, but it was very resistant to communism.
Yeah, true. But I have to say, when I went to Poland first time during the Cold War to Zakopane on skiing,
yeah,
there was a huge difference between Yugoslavia and Poland at that time in the 80s. The stores were empty, and we were all going to that Pevex stores,
right,
which
yeah.
were duty-free stores anyhow, but that first trip so you were already, while studying at Oxford, more or less interested in Eastern Europe or communist world, or
yes,
it came
that's right. That's
eventually?
where it was through traveling that I became interested. When it was 1962 when I went to Poland, and with this group of students, and I was already a history graduate in Oxford, and I realised they'd told us nothing. The great University of Oxford had told us nothing about the history of Poland. I remember standing in front of Wawel Castle in Krakow and thinking, something must have happened here, but no idea. And it was almost a sense of shame that I didn't know anything really. Well, none of us did, and that was the first spur to start learning language and history. Those were my two interests.
So you probably started with Russian and then chose another Slavic language.
Russian was only a sideline. There's a man in Oxford called Robert Maxwell. Have you heard of Maxwell? He became a great tycoon.
Okay. If that's the one, yeah.
His real name was Ludwig Koch, and he became a press baron, but he was basically a gangster, and his name Maxwell was the name of brand of American cigarettes that he'd been smuggling when he was a British officer. How you imagine it, but he was a British officer in 1945 in Germany, and had this business of smuggling cigarettes. So he changed his name from Koch to Maxwell, and he became a billionaire. And one way he became very rich was by translating Soviet and East European scientific articles into English and then selling them at inflated prices to libraries and so on. And for that purpose, he needed translators, young people who knew. So that's how I started learning Russian. I saw a notice saying free lessons for Russian. So that's how I started. And we actually met Maxwell in person, because he came along in the evenings and saw how we were getting on. His daughter is in prison, as you probably know, in New York now, who we met. I met as a student. She was a teenager then. Yeah.
When your Europe was published, there was a lot of talk of that ability to recognize that something was going on the other side of either Iron Curtain or that border in between East and the West, and so on and so on. So in the light of everything that happened in the past 20 years, 20-something years, plus in the light of everything that happened in the last month and a half, or 2 or 3 years since the Russian war in Ukraine, how do you see European continent today? What?
Well, that's a big question. Could I go back to the beginnings of that big book on Europe?
Sure.
Because we're talking about 1989, I think. This was Gorbachev era.
Yeah.
I had written the Oxford History of Poland, which couldn't be published in Poland. It was only published in Poland 2 or 3 years later. But the Oxford University Press decided that they wanted to commission a history of Europe, which included the whole of Europe. Before that, in the Western world, Europe meant Western Europe.
Sure.
There was nothing else. And the history editor of OUP, of course, approached the famous professors in Oxford who call themselves professors of European history, but said, we want a history which includes Eastern Europe as well as Western Europe. And I think 3 professors wrote plans, book plans for it, but none of them knew anything about Eastern Europe at all. Yeah. And the editor then called me in. I was a very junior person. Nobody thought of, of giving the commission to me. There were all these senior people, but none of them knew any Eastern language at all.
Okay, yeah.
None. And so the editor called me up. Well, I went to see him, and he said, Norman, we know you know Polish and Russian and so on, but do you know anything about Western Europe? And I said, sure. I used to be a French teacher. I said, all scholars who study Eastern Europe know something about Western Europe, but it's not the other way around. So that's how I got the job. But it's still the same. The knowledge of Eastern Europe in British and American Europe, British and American universities is very, very low. There are a few people, but not very many. And we're still very Western oriented.
Yeah. Do you think that will change, or the European integration, that they were starting to change that, or not really, or very slowly?
It is changing. I think this Ukraine war is drawing attention to. It's the first time since the Cold War that West Europeans are seeing that their security is the same as the security of whatever, the Baltic states, Poland, Hungary doesn't seem to have woken up, but no, I think it is changing. But these traditions are very difficult to change.
Mm.
In Oxford, they still teach Polish as a subsidiary of Russian.
Yeah.
The chair of Russian in Oxford was created in 1889. 1889, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Poland didn't exist, but Polish was a subsidiary of. That was the Tsar, just like Ukraine was Mala Russia.
Yeah.
Poland was, a dialect of Russian. But Oxford still teaches that.
Yeah. With Yugoslav studies, it's especially in the United States, it's even more complicated because those experts on Eastern Europe were not always covering Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was like a separate group. Well, with the breakup of Yugoslavia, that didn't really help. And with the end of uniqueness of Yugoslavia, with the end of the Cold War and all that, it also it's kind of a very narrow group of people who do understand.
Yes, well,
and also,
we have a common interest. I am beating my head against a brick wall here in Oxford to establish some sort of group of Polish studies, proper Polish studies.
Yeah.
But there's the fortress of
academia.
Academic fortress is very resistant.
Yes. Yeah. And imagine that's happening with a country with 40 million people. How it must be for small countries or many other smaller nations.
Yeah.
Well, we are painfully aware of that.
Well, it's a common interest. I wonder whether one shouldn't form a group with similar problems. There's a lot of resistance in the academic world to national histories, national studies, which is understandable, but the effect is that nothing changes. They've all studied the Holocaust, and which is fine, but they think that's all there is to talk about. They're not. It's surprising, the Holocaust took place in Poland, largely historical Poland.
Yeah.
But nobody thinks of studying the context, what was going on, and they watch these films like whatever, Schindler's Ark or something, and that's all they know. It's really a major problem.
So you started basically, or you were assigned in 1989. During that process, were you working on other things, or how the whole enterprise looked like? Were you constantly working on that, writing, reading? And as a historian of modern periods, it's not so, I would say common, but you started with, Europe before the history, actually.
I had been, it was very good looking at my career, looking back. I had been a school history teacher. Where I had to teach all sorts of things, but to secondary schools. But I had a broader general knowledge than most. One of the problems of academic life is specialization.
Okay.
Right. You do 3 years of study, then you do a PhD on some tiny aspect of 1 century, 1 decade, 1 place. And then they say, European history. Well, you don't. But I had a broader experience of teaching, all sorts of things, British history, French history. I was going to be a French specialist, but it didn't work out. But I knew a lot about France, spoke French, read French. Same with Italy. I know Italian, and so looking back, I was a rare creature in Oxford, and that's how it started. I should say that I had a bad experience in America shortly before that. This commission to write the Oxford history saved my career, basically. I went to California, to Stanford. I applied for a professorship, won the competition, received a letter from the dean saying I would be appointed, and then it never happened. I was told to go home. And it was an early example of cancel culture, a group of people who just didn't want East European history, in particular Polish history.
Okay.
So my wife and I came back from California with a young baby and nothing much else, and then met this good fortune that in Oxford they wanted me to write this history. So it took me 9 years to write that book. Working all the time. I never got sabbatical leave or anything like that. And of course, it was a great moment, 1996, when it was published. I think it was the only book published by Oxford University Press which was a #1 bestseller. They couldn't believe it. They said it was such a big book. It was 1,265 pages. And there was a difference of opinion in the press of whether a book of that size could be published in paper. And they wanted to make it OUP's first electronic book.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyhow, the paper faction, whatever, won out, and it was published in paper and was a huge success. And they couldn't believe themselves. It never got published electronically as a result.
Okay. I mean, that approach, well, maybe two things connected with the book. From what I read, many were praising those capsules and the framed text. I love these, and I didn't really have problems understanding the overall interpretation and the idea of the text because of that many framed stories. That might be maybe one topic to tackle, but also when you mentioned that you were one of the first, or that you were asked to use your knowledge of East European history. In the meantime, there were relatively few overviews or partially overviews of European history. Dan Dinner, for instance, Tony Judd's books that incorporate Eastern Europe, being the Czech Republic more, or starting with Odessa Stairs, and was that a logical development because of the changed nature of European Union integrations or stuff, or maybe your Europe?
Well, it's all part of the big change which happened with the collapse of the Soviet Union. How old was I in 1989? Sort of 50 years old or something, and never known anything else. Europe was divided in the East and West, and suddenly the wall came down, but the wall came down in our knowledge. People were interested more than they had been, and scholars could study freely. You know, when I started writing about Poland in the 1970s, you couldn't go to the archives and find any papers. You know, they well, you could do, but they, as in all communist systems, the officials decided what they would show you and what they wouldn't show you.
True, yeah.
And I was interested in, to begin with, in the War of 1920, where the Red Army was defeated by the Poles, amazingly.
Yeah.
But that didn't exist. That was a non-fact, non-event. So I went to the archives and said, you know, could I have some, what is available? And they said, well, there's no such war, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
was it the same? I mean, de Gaulle was in Poland at that time, and
well, yeah.
Was it different for the French?
Or? Yeah, no, it was a well-known event, and I had access in England to all sorts of things. One was I had access to pre-war Polish studies,
okay,
which were the Poles, of course, were very interested in a lot of books. But I could also look at Soviet material. Tukhachevsky, who was the Marshal of 1920, was shot by Stalin.
Yes.
In 1936, and all his books, all paper, were just destroyed. So even if I'd gone to Moscow, they wouldn't have been able to show me anything, but it was all in London.
Okay.
The British Museum had copies of all of Tukhachevsky's writings from the 1920s and the early 30s. So I had Polish and Soviet material, which was very difficult to get at. And that book has never been out of print. It's still going. It's, it's a sort of case study of politics and military things.
You know, when the movie some 10 years ago, shortly after Smolensk, I think the incident did, when the president... I was asked to talk with the ambassador here in Zagreb prior to the screening of the movie, which was all that commemoration ceremony or whatever in Zagreb. You mentioned that difference between historians, or that there are still tendency of West European historians that are less knowledgeable about Eastern Europe. But I mean, when you look at the historiography of East Europeans, it is still not as engaging, as dynamic, or maybe that's my impression, as the West Europeans. You know, the way, maybe that's school of historiographies. Sometimes the topics tend to be even more narrow than of the Western historians. Sometimes it's relatively, well, if I could say boring, maybe I wouldn't be totally wrong.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Obviously, I know Poland better than anywhere, but I'm sure this is true, that the Polish historians are obsessed with their own history, because Polish history has been sort of excluded from, wider interest. So when I'm interviewed, the last interview I had on Zoom was, last week, was with somebody from Poznań. It's 1,000 years since the first Polish king was crowned. Bolesław Chrobry, 0 1025.
Just to add something, please, we are celebrating the whole year 1100 years since the crowning of the first Croatian king, Tomislav. We were not sure whether he existed or not, but nevertheless,
it has to be celebrated. Good, I remember that because anyhow, but I remember this interview. It was half an hour, and the questioning knew a lot more about Boleslav Hrobry than I did, but he had no awareness that the coronation of a king was part of the Christianization of the whole of Europe, because it was a step in a broad process.
Yeah.
And I have to keep saying, I wish I'd heard, I knew about this Croatian king. But and I think this sort of narrow obsession with their own national histories prevents them from having a broader view.
Yeah. But there is something else, in my opinion. I'm a diplomatic historian primarily, and I deal with Tito's Yugoslavia, non-alignment, American Yugoslav relations. So I teach world history after all. But if you take your narrow subject, then it's much harder to question you. It's much harder to be exposed to the market. You deal with your own thing. You get tenure without too many problems. You are below radar. And sometimes in Yugoslav times, at least, especially in the case of Croatian historiography, it was always, if we do not cover Croatian history, who's going to do that? So we have to do that, because there is no one else. And then you don't see the whole picture. Yes, I agree. Very often you don't see the picture.
Yeah, there it is. The Europe book was a big milestone in my career, but also I think in historiography that but it hasn't. The teaching of history has not improved. The entrenched interests just don't change, or they change very slowly.
Yes. And even when it changed, like in Poland with Polish museums, then there was always a possibility to, turn the clock back. Like with Gdańsk Museum and those things.
Did you know I was the chairman of the Gdańsk Museum of the Second World War?
No, but I met him in Udine last June. Mackiewicz, what's his name?
Oh, well, Mackiewicz, yes.
Yes, yes.
Well, he was the director. Oh. I was the chairman of the the academic committee, and we were both sacked.
I signed a letter to support you then. I wasn't sacked, but I'm not being invited to the Polish embassy receptions any longer.
Well, the man who sacked us, they never even told me. They told me 12 months later.
Okay.
Mackiewicz suffered, of course. That was his career. But the guy who sacked him is Nawrocki. Is now the candidate for the presidency of Poland.
I presume I know the party. So
yeah, awful. No, they're a real gang. The Kaczynski and so are up to no good.
Yeah. You talked about that, but I'll return to the capsules, the frames. What have you done with those that were not included in the text of Europe? You said there were more. And when it comes to style, very engaging, very interesting, which has to be for a book of that size. Who was influencing or the major influence on you of historians? Was it Taylor or what? I mean,
obviously A.J.P. Taylor was the major influence when I was a student. Taylor in 1960 was the best known historian in the world because he was the first, what they call a teledon. He appeared on television. He had an amazing ability to talk very interestingly without any notes for as long as he was told.
Okay.
In Oxford, he was famous. He only lectured at 8 o'clock in the morning. So, but hundreds would come to hear him.
Okay. Okay.
And there was a big bell which rang on the hour, Magdalen College bong, and he would start speaking. But he would never overrun. He would always finish, 59 and a half minutes. Okay. Perfect conclusion, beginning, middle, and end. He was absolutely amazing. And he had this ability to go on television before there was recording and speak. They gave him he told us about it. They said, well, it's a 30-minute program. It has to have an introduction and an ending. So we need you to speak for 28 and a half minutes. Can you do it? And he said, no problem. And he showed them he could do it.
Okay.
And he became the first sort of television star. Yeah. And he was an extraordinary man. He came from a very wealthy family.
Okay.
When he was a student in Oxford in 1926, he had his own Rolls Royce.
Oh,
yeah. But he was a socialist.
Yeah.
His father was a very rich broker, financial broker from Manchester. But his mother was a Trotskyite. And she actually took Alan Taylor to Moscow, I think in 1922 or 1923. Before he was a student, he must have been sort of 18 years old, something like that, to meet Trotsky.
Yeah.
Of course, they never met Trotsky. You turn up, and Stalin was already there, and somebody asking, could we meet Trotsky? They were shown the door. But he was very stimulating, he was very kind to me. We came from the same county, from Lancashire.
Okay.
And he, being a champagne socialist, had no idea what the working class was like. He used to ask me, Norman, what's it like in a cotton mill? And I'd say, well, pretty awful. It's hot, dusty, and noisy. And so he was definitely a major influence.
Anyone else?
Well, when I left school, age 17, the year that I went to Zagreb,
Yugoslavia.
Yeah, and one of the last things my school teacher said is that you have to read Edward Gibbon, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, 14 volumes. And I was reading that when I was on that summer when we went to Austria and Croatia and so on. And Gibbon, I don't know whether they probably don't tell students at all, but he's the best historical writer that ever was. He's extremely elegant, very funny. You wouldn't imagine that you can roar with laughter.
Oh.
As an 18th century book on Roman history, but it's true. He's just wonderful style, vocabulary, irony, sarcasm sometimes. Gibbon was very critical of the Catholic Church. And was
Which
making,
is very smart, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, it's Enlightenment times, but anyhow, you're asking that was a huge influence. That if you write history, you have to write it well, stylishly, interesting, make people laugh sometimes, make people, say surprising things, and that all came out of Gibbon.
Great. When Churchill went to India as a young boy, I think that he read or he was reading Gibbon's books there.
I didn't. I wouldn't like to, but yeah, sure. Gibbon was, for the educated English people, the absolute standard for.
Maybe you met. I don't know. We recently published again, reprinted William Deakin's Embattled Mountain here, the memoirs during the Second World War.
I haven't read that, but I knew Deakin personally.
Okay, yeah. Maybe if you could say, I wrote a foreword to the new edition of Embattled Mountain here, but how was he? What was he like?
Deakin had been one of Churchill's secretaries, and was sent to Yugoslavia, I think, in 1943. True,
yes. Yeah. For us, that's a very well-known story in movies and stuff. Yeah.
Anyhow, and of course, British intelligence. During the wartime intelligence was a source of many post-war careers, academic careers. They were the only people who knew about Eastern Europe.
Okay.
And Deakin came back. The war ended. His job ended, and he decided to create a college in Oxford, St. Anthony's College, which is his creation.
Yeah.
And I was a student, a postgraduate there in the late 60s. So that's where I met him. He set up St. Anthony's in 1946. Must have retired, I would think, about 1959. Went to live in the south of France. But he would come regularly to St. Anthony's. Every time there was a feast or a dinner or something, he would be there. And I was a very young, scholar, and but he was very friendly, and he was very interested in Poland. Like he didn't know Poland, and he used to be asking me, what's going on in Poland.
But he was regularly coming to Yugoslavia.
I don't know about it.
Yes.
Guess not. I guess not.
He was on Brioni with Tito, and
he probably was. I don't think he was a sort of regular visitor or anything like that.
I mean,
I wouldn't have known, but
for sure he remained until he died in very close contact with Vladimir Velebit, who was Yugoslav ambassador in the 50s when Yugoslavia has signed with Italy the London Memoranda of 1954, and the borderline, which is still the borderline between Slovenia, Croatia, and Italy, was agreed on. That was under the pressure of the United States and United Kingdom. on both Italy and Yugoslavia to reach a deal.
Right.
So he stayed in lifelong contact with Velebit. Velebit died not that long ago. His wife, a couple of years ago, she was 101. But kids live in Switzerland, so I know that from them, who are now relatively senior citizens. So if you could explain Europe or define Europe, and maybe Europe in 2026, 2030, what would you say? What is Europe for you, or how do you see the future of Europe?
Well, you have to read the 70-page introduction to my Europe. There are many Europes. There's a geographical Europe, which ends in the Urals, which makes at least part of Russia European. There's certainly the Muscovite state where Russia started, part of Europe. And various Europes of the imagination and so on. Political Europe. We now have the European Union, which is it 28 or 20,
27 without you?
27 without, yeah, okay. Which is a sort of divide. Ukraine is the, if you like, the no man's land between Russia and the European Union. There are all sorts of definitions of Europe.
But with your experience,
the big question is Russia part of Europe or not? I wouldn't like to go into that at any length. But what's very interesting about the Ukrainians are that they feel European if you talk to them in a way that Russians don't.
Okay.
And this comes from Ukraine having been part of Poland for longer than it was part of Russia. Nobody knows about it. You know, everybody learns about Ukraine, almost everybody. Ukraine as part of the Russian Empire. They don't know for hundreds of years before that it was part of Poland.
Yeah.
You know, Kiev was ruled from Krakow.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well,
that opens the question of borders.
But although Polish-Ukrainian history is full of conflicts and nonetheless, the Ukrainians had all sorts of contacts, you know, via Poland that they wouldn't have had from Muscovy. And you know that the Ukrainian national anthem is basically the Polish national anthem. Ukraine hasn't perished yet. You know, it's.
I know even
better.
Yes, I know even better that Polish national anthem is what Yugoslav national anthem used to be.
All right.
That's the same one, Hej Slaveni in our case. The same melody.
Are the words the same or the music?
The same music. Yeah, Hej Slaveni in Yugoslav version.
All right.
So
that came out of the 1848 Congress, I think.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah. No, the Polish culture is the antithesis of everything that is Muscovite, and the Ukrainians are caught in the middle. But I think the Ukrainians will prevail. Putin has done more for Ukrainian identity, national awareness than anybody in history. And that's not going to change. Whatever happens militarily, or politically. But again, my view is that Putin is very weak.
Okay.
He's got a huge facade, and you see him striding through the gilded walls of the Kremlin on television, and he's pretending to be the Tsar of a huge empire, but actually it's a shambolic. It's becoming a vassal state of China.
Yeah.
China is now 10 times richer, more advanced, nuclear armed empire. And Putin has had to subordinate himself to China in order to survive.
But in the light of all this, how do you see this new movement on the European continent with the rearmament?
Well, this is again, I think Putin has saved NATO.
Okay.
We don't know what will happen, but certainly Putin's invasion of Ukraine has stimulated the European Union as never before. They are pulling together. They're setting new objectives. They seem to be very supportive of Ukraine, and I think Ukraine will survive long enough to be a lasting piece on the European map. Putin wants to wipe it out.
And everything that's going on between Washington and the old continent today in the past month and a half?
Trump is a total aberration. He's we've not seen anything like it before, and I don't think we'll ever see it again. Like he's in some ways a throwback to 19th century power politics. He looks at the map and sees Greenland and think, well, that would be
because I need it. We need it.
Yeah. Like it's just like the 19th century great powers having no thought for smaller nations or people who live in these places. That's one thing, but he's totally immoral or amoral. Very difficult to deal with because I don't think he knows himself what he's doing, but his method, the Trump method, is to say something really outrageous, cause confusion, and then see how other people react. Yeah. So he's, Poland with Russia and Ukraine. He's said several outrageous and doing outrageous things to the Ukrainians. But he's quite capable of doing something outrageous to the Russians, just to see whether he can knock their heads together. And he seems oblivious to the consequences of what he does. Can you imagine what it's like in Canada?
Yes. I spoke with Canadian ambassador here, and she said, well, we take him seriously, but it's also insane, that we don't know. Yeah.
But he doesn't seem to know what he's doing. I heard that the Canadians control the only road between America and Alaska. And all American trade going to Alaska and coming back is on that road.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Canadians have I think they're putting sort of massive tariffs on every lorry going to Alaska, and Trump will suddenly hear that the Alaskans are not very happy.
Yeah.
Like no, it's mind-boggling. The one thing we seem to know is that Trump doesn't like China. That is his idée fixe, and in that case, his approach to the Ukraine war is to pull Russia away from China.
Yeah.
But whether it will happen, I don't know. I say I think Putin is essentially very weak.
Maybe two last things. One now connected with this: the rest of the Western Balkans, or countries that are not members of the European Union, that whole in Southeastern Europe. How do you see the destiny of Serbia, Kosovo, Bosnia, Montenegro?
Well, I think because of the strengthening of the bonds in Europe, that the European Union will be a more attractive place to join, and that the European Union will do its best to accelerate entry to of these countries. There is a very strong feeling that all European nations should pull together, both against Russia and in fear of America drifting away.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's all a bit temporary. Trump is only likely to be there for less than 4 years now. Whether he will try and create an authoritarian state, find a successor. Is he 80 years old now, or he's 80
close,
years?
Very close. Yeah,
he's younger than me, but he's like, I wouldn't like to be ruling the United States. But he may try to perpetuate his system. He's going that way. Sorry, what Musk is doing. Will we have non-elected President Musk in 3 years' time? I don't know. Everything is up in the air. It's the Wild West. But I think Putin, being weak, won't last very long. I think Putin's nightmare, I don't know whether you've heard of this, but the Chinese are encroaching on Siberia.
Yeah, I know, of course. Yeah.
And they have pretensions that the Russian Far East, Vladivostok, is Chinese.
Yeah.
And I think the Chinese know that attacking Taiwan is very, very risky. But attacking Russia and the Far East is easy. I think they might flip and go that way.
Yeah.
I think Putin has been, as it were, on probation. He was trying to prove to Beijing that he was a great power, that he could seize back Ukraine in 2 or 3 days. And this is how great powers behave, and China can take Taiwan if it wants. But he's made a total mess of it. Like, it's just hopelessly incompetent. The Russian army, nobody thought the Ukrainians could resist. And although they're smaller, but they're holding out.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians have more or less destroyed the Black Sea fleet, and so I think the Russians are in a very weak position when it comes to negotiations. The Russians will say, "Well, we'll hold on to everything,"
Yeah.
and then the Ukrainians will say, "Oh, thank you very much. You know, say, give us another offer." And Trump is going to get furious because he thinks that he can settle it all in one afternoon.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Trump wants to get rid of Ukraine, get rid of Israel, Gaza, and concentrate on China. And he's going to find that it's not so easy.
Yeah, of course. Last question. We mentioned Deakin, who was working with Prime Minister to be Churchill, and he was amazed how many pages they were able to produce overnight when when Churchill was working on his history of the English-speaking peoples, I think. Shortly after this book, you wrote another large book, thick book with over 1,000 pages, and then the others followed, and so on. How many, in your case, when you are really concentrated and have time, how many pages per day, or how many lines per day, or
well,
can you
the answer is a lot more than at present, although on Saturday this week, I did write one article just in 3 hours, but that 2,000 words in 3 hours. But I used to be able to sit down, you know, for 12, 14 hours and just keep going. And I don't know, 4,000, 5,000 words a day. I had a very good routine. I would work in the morning, go for a walk in the afternoon, then go to the library, order books, and it was just a perpetual motion. But I wrote the whole of Europe and all the other books by hand.
Oh,
by
really?
hand, pen and ink.
Oh, wow.
Pen and ink.
Good for you. Well,
I can no longer, do that sort of thing. But
when at that time when you were working on Europe, when would you normally go to sleep, and when would you get that morning?
My routine. I found that if I worked in the evenings, you needed to sleep late and you would wake up tired. So I worked in the mornings, 6 o'clock in the morning, big cup of coffee, break for breakfast, always had some sort of exercise in the afternoon. Walking to the library was part of the whole thing.
How far is it from your place, the library?
Well, when I was writing, 4 miles, like an hour's walk.
Good.
There's a lovely, I don't know if you know Oxford, Port Meadow, a long tree-lined river walk, 4 miles long, all the way to the centre of Oxford. Come back on the bus or on the bicycle. But I must have been pretty fit because I kept it up. I was going to say the last thing to tell you. You asked about influences. My late uncle, Donny Davies, he was killed in the Munich air disaster. 1958.
Okay. Okay.
But he was very close. He had lost his own son, and I was a sort of substitute son. I used to stay with him a lot, and he was a writer. And I think that the very first thing I ever wrote, 1957, after I came back from
Yugoslavia,
I wrote an essay and showed it to my uncle. And it was all about climbing the Karavankan mountains and peering over the ridge into Yugoslavia. And I remember him saying it was sort of romantic prose, and I remember him writing on it, "No more purple bonnets."
No more purple bonnets. Okay.
Yeah, this was trying to describe the mountains. I don't know bonnets. You know but yeah. So that was my very first foray into trying to write. Interestingly.
Great.
And then he was killed. So that was a very big blow to us. So Yugoslavia was there right at the beginning.
Good. I'll use that in my article about this conversation and the book. Well, thank you very much. If you are maybe close to television today, at 6:30, let me check. At 6:30 today, Monday the 10th of March, on BBC Two, you'll have Michael Portillo and Great Continental Railway Journey.
All right.
Today is the first one from Pula to Pazin by train. And there should be a piece on Brioni Islands and Tito's residence there.
Right.
And then you should recognize more people than just Michael Portillo. So,
oh my gosh, I recognize you. You
might. That was 2 years ago. But you will. I mean, we'll see how it
very good.
worked
No,
out.
we'll see if we can watch that. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah, I'm not certain that I've got your name correctly. Can you say slowly?
Yeah. TVR.
Yeah.
TKO. TVR TKO.
TKO.
Tvrtko.
Tvrtko.
Tvrtko, it means, hard. Tvrd is hard,
Yeah.
Or firmin, what be in Christian tradition. My family name is Jakovina, Jakovina. My email address is tvrtko.jakovina@FF, Faculty of Philosophy, Filozofski fakultet, ZG, Zagreb.hr. ffzg.hr.
Okay. I've got that. Very good.
Yeah, should be or them.
So you're the hard man then.
Well, I'm a short man.
So
but
am I.
Might be. I yes. Good. Well, it would be great if you could repeat your trip to Rijeka, and I go to I have a summer place on the island of Krk, which is just next to Rijeka, but we will see. It's been a while since my last time in England. I used to come now more regularly, but I was there at the School of Global Governance, it was called, a Center for the Study of Global Governance. Mary Kaldor was in charge of that program.
Oh gosh, I knew her, 50 years ago.
But since I studied in the States, and I was always a bit more interested in America than, so was dealing with that mostly. And then non-alignment, I got certain archival material, and I was dealing with that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Britain is not in good shape. Starmer seems to have conducted himself quite well, but it's not a happy world at the moment.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake to leave European Union.
Yeah, absolutely.
From our side too.
We're now feeling that, and Starmer was very reluctant even to talk about it because there's a lot of votes in it. But he's now coming a lot closer to Macron, and I think the new German chancellor will be part of the club of the willing.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, all the best. I must
the same to
get
you.
on with something else.
Good. Thank you very much.
Very good. Very enjoyable. Yes. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Thank you.